The holidays, year's end, time to reflect on what's transpired, who's been naughty and who's been nice when it comes to the animals. PETA's greatest hits of 2018, next on the PETA Podcast. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this behind-the-scenes look at PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. Here we talk to the key players at PETA and the movement and ask them about how animal rights change their lives and how they stay motivated to make the world a better place for the animals. On today's episode, 2018, a banner year for the animals and for PETA.
It helps to have so many victories. We come back fresh and hard and tenacious at these companies like Canada Goose and like SeaWorld. And we will win those. I mean, that's just, there are no two ways about it.
PETA Senior VP of Communications, Lange, is confident about 2019 after PETA won battles on several fronts in 2018. PETA's anti-fur campaign got a boost as major fashion houses dumped the use of fur. In animal testing, Dove went cruelty-free, and more than 20 food companies banned cruel experiments on animals. The corporate wins make a difference, but so do the little victories, like the rescue of a 17-year-old dog who spent her life on a chain.
There was a dog who our community animal project rescued, and her name was Miss Willy. And she had been on a chain for, I think it was 17 years. And by the time we were finally able to ask the people who owned her and neglected her to give her up, she was weeks away from death. And we were, one of my colleagues actually took her in and did a bucket list for her and let her, enjoy the beach and enjoy her favorite foods. She lived for, I think it was about 2 weeks, and we documented what her life was like as it should have been that entire time.
The big wins in 2018 for animals big and small, next on the PETA Podcast. But first, thanks again for joining us here at the PETA Podcast. Please share a link with friends. Let them know the animals have a voice on the PETA Podcast. And keep binging. There's lots to listen to on the PETA Podcast. Want to hear from PETA President and co-founder Ingrid Newkirk, especially on that issue of euthanasia? Hear it directly from Ingrid on Episode 1. One of my favorites, PETA's Chief Counsel, Jeff Kerr, featured in Episode 2 on the link between civil rights and animal rights. Much of what we talk about in this Greatest Hits episode, we go more into depth in previous episodes, so check them all out. Remember, if you're on Apple Podcasts, don't forget to rate and review the show. It helps the algorithm know that PETA has a podcast on the issues important to you. Now, if you really want to help the animals, you can always hit the Donate Now button at PETA.org. And if you're high-tech and have Amazon's Alexa, it's as easy as saying, Alexa, donate to PETA. And now to our episode. 2018, the animals were the big winners. Thanks to your efforts to help PETA in the fight to end animals used in food, fashion, and entertainment, and in animal experimentation. But there's much more to do. Here's my conversation with Senior VP Lange on the PETA Podcast. Tell me about this year, 2018. Compared to other years, has it been a good year for PETA?
It's been a great year for PETA. It's interesting because I have the benefit of being able to look back over a lot of years. I've been with PETA for 26 years, and every year the victories are coming in even fast and furious, more than the year before. And you think, wow, we can't have another great year like this one. And then we do. We top it. So it's just, I think it's really a reflection on how people view animals now. It's just a new age, especially young people. They're just coming up and they see the world differently. They see the use of animals as something that we need to be backing away from. And they're, kind of making their purchasing decisions accordingly.
And so when you see all these changes and you see that it's still a great year and it keeps getting better and better, that's going to make you feel good as an activist who's been at it a long time as well, right?
Yes, it really, really does. I mean, we're known at PETA for being very tenacious and for sticking with it. When PETA was founded, no one knew what vegan was. We were told by other animal groups, don't talk about fish, don't talk about dairy. People aren't ready for that. And Ingrid Newkirk, who is the president of PETA, always said, people may not be ready, but the animals are. And that's something that we've always lived by. And it has really paid off. We just keep our eye on the prize. And as a result, for example, you're seeing vegan living we've kind of hit a tipping point on that. And it's not just what people are eating, but it's what they're wearing. No animal skins, no exotic animal skins, doing away with leather. Fur is definitely a thing of the past. If it's any indication on how many of the top designers kicked fur to the curb this year, including Michael Kors, Burberry, Gucci, Versace, and then just a couple weeks ago, Chanel. And Chanel not only banned fur, but they banned exotic skins, which is just, it's astounding and it's wonderful.
Well, I was going to ask you about that fur campaign. And, one of the first things I recall is the phrase fur is dead. That's always been one of the foundation battlegrounds for PETA. Tell us about the progress there. Can PETA claim victory there with all these houses, going fur free? Like you said, Michael Kors, Burberry, Gucci, Versace, that was just in 2018. But are we close to saying, hey, we've won that battle, or is there still further to go?
We're close. We haven't won it. There's still most of the animals killed, skinned alive for their fur that all happens in China. And there's still a big market in China for fur. But some other countries as well. But so we haven't won it, but it's a clear indication that we will in my lifetime. We never thought someone like Michael Kors would give it up. I mean, that was just one that, he dug his heels in, and same was true with Versace. But not only did Donatella ban it from the line, but she celebrated the ban. I mean, she really, really came out and talked about how it was because of the animals. And so, these have been hard fought battles, but I think it's an indication that, we're just about pounding the final nail into the coffin of the fur industry.
And now the sensitivity level is raised. It's not just fur, it's also the exotic skins, as you mentioned, and the leather. Well, what about the use of mohair? That's one of the things that people think about during the wintertime. That's significant, especially now, like you said, when people are cold, they're thinking about, what are we going to wear to warm up with? And mohair is one of those things that now is that there's a new awareness that mohair, not so great. Yeah,
it's true. And, the thing of it is people can't be expected to know that there's cruelty behind these products until we're able to expose it. And we did an expose of the mohair industry this year. And it was deeply disturbing to see what goats go through. They're factory farmed and then they're slaughtered in horrible ways, have their throats slit while they're fully conscious. These are the things we find in all of the investigations we do into animals who are killed for their fur or for their skins. Last year, the big push for us was Angora, and we got Angora banned and taken off the shelves of just about every retailer. This year, we came back with the investigation into mohair, the same thing. H&M, Zara, Topshop, Gap, they all dumped mohair pretty much before we even showed people the expose, because we went to these places and we said, here's where mohair is coming from. You're going to want to get out in front of this and ban it before people decide to boycott your shop. 330 brands have ended the use of mohair because of our investigation this year. It's huge. And it's just, again, it's a reflection that people just don't know. But once they know, they're really making compassionate decisions. And I think part of that, too, is that it's never been easier to dress vegan than it is today.
Not only are the designers stopping the use of these fabrics or stopping the use of mohair, but it seems like it's going to be illegal for anyone to sell fur in certain places. So, I mean, we had two big cities say no more fur. That's pretty amazing.
Oh, it's so great. San Francisco and Los Angeles, two of my favorite cities in the country, living in one as I do. It was just a huge boost to the anti-fur campaign to have the city council in San Francisco and Los Angeles very easily ban the sale of fur in both cities. It almost seems like a no-brainer, It seems like, of course, it should be the law. I mean, these animals on fur farms, They live in horrible conditions in small wire cages. There have been no improvements on this front. They are not given any veterinary attention when they're injured or they get sick. And they're killed either by being gassed, having their necks crudely broken, or they are electrocuted. It is a gruesome, gruesome industry. And it is animal abuse. There are no two ways of looking at this. And it's really terrific to see, especially large cities like this, step forward to say, you know what? No, our city doesn't want to take part in this. We're banning it. And I couldn't be more proud as a Los Angeles citizen.
I mean, but it's sort of symbolic, but I guess if you're a retailer, you can say, okay, well, we won't sell in Los Angeles, but we'll sell it in Orange County, or we'll sell all our fur in San Diego or something like that. I guess I could say that. I guess it is significant when a city says, hey, look, no retail outlets can sell fur. It's almost like, there is a ban on drugs, supposedly. You can't sell drugs.
Yeah.
But make it harder. They make it harder to sell fur than to sell drugs.
Yeah, I don't see a black market in fur taking place because, honest to goodness, it's like nobody wants to be seen in it. You know, that's the thing. It's this. It's so, for lack of a better word, it's so passé, and it's not a fashion that's going to come back because you see someone in fur and it represents cruelty to animals at just the most extreme level. And there was a time people didn't care, there was a time people didn't know, and then there was a time a few people didn't care, and now we're just way past that point. So it is rather symbolic, I suppose, but it's a great precedent to set, and it sets the tone, really.
And a lot of the reason why there's this big movement toward more sensitivity toward the animals is because PETA has made people more sensitive with its eyewitness investigations. And 2018 really was a banner year to let people know that this is what happens to the animals. So what are some of those eyewitness investigations?
Well, yeah, and I've got to really hand it to people because the investigations we do are very, very hard to watch, but people do watch them. For example, we did quite a bit on the live eating front this year. You know, when octopus is served in some restaurants, it's served while the animal's still alive. So in the back kitchen, we revealed that octopuses, while they're still alive, are having their legs cut off while they're writhing in pain. And then they're served sometimes. Sometimes they're boiled alive right at the table. We revealed that in investigations this year. We also continued, on the clothing front. Again, a lot of people just don't know. When you hear about wool or wearing wool, people think it's just a sheep haircut. And that's how you get the wool from them. It's just, very benign, but it couldn't be further from the truth. We've done more than a dozen investigations in this country, in South America, and in Australia, which is the largest wool exporter in the world. And in every single instance, we find the same thing. That is these gentle, sweet animals getting beaten. They're dragged by their back legs. They're hit with the shearing tools. They're sheared so roughly that they're cut open and then they're sewn shut without a lick of anesthesia used. Some of these animals are killed out of frustration. They have their necks broken. These people are paid by the weight of the amount of the wool they get off these animals. And, it's very light. So they move very, very fast with no regard for how the animals are treated. And so we've done several more wool investigations this year. And we're seeing people responding beautifully by just staying away from it. We also, a lot of people, when they travel abroad, they see the country that they're in by riding horses and donkeys. You see that a lot. And we were able to reveal just what goes on with these poor, abused, malnourished, beaten animals in Greece, for example. Really urging people to stay away from any attractions while you're traveling abroad that involve camels, that involve horses, involve donkeys, involve elephants. It was really unfortunate. Priyanka Chopra got married this year, and we found out that she rode an elephant in the wedding, and she got a lot of grief internationally for that because these elephants don't stand there waiting for someone to jump on their back. They live their life in chains, their lives in chains. They're beaten with bull hooks to keep them in line. And that is their day in and day out. There is no freedom for these animals. There is no joy in their lives because they're used in this way. So we've done some investigations there as well.
There's no such thing as a ceremonial elephant or,
No.
kind of a religious display kind. No, just
no, nothing benign about it, and again, I don't blame people for not knowing that, because by the time they see the elephants, they're in their dress and they look so beautiful and they don't seem like they're being hurt. But just when you go behind the scenes and you see exactly how they're living and how they live in chains and how they're beaten, and they're not allowed to step an inch out of line, and the mahout, who is the person who trains them and keeps them in line, is standing right there with the bull hook, ready to beat them if they get dirty or if they step out of line, like I said. So it's a very unkind world out there for animals who are forced to give people rides. And we were able to take a step forward in revealing that and changing, hopefully changing the way people look at those tourist traps.
All right. So now, as far as, say, more domestic uses for animals, like when people go to a pet store or when people see, the a dog or a cat, what are some of the investigations that affect everyday, our everyday lives and our everyday interactions with animals?
We've done another investigation into PetSmart, Petco, these big box chain stores that sell, for the most part, pet supplies, but they also sell small animals, fish and birds and reptiles. And it's appalling, the supply chain for these big box stores. So many of the animals die in transport. So many of the animals die in stores. We found that they were being put in freezers while they were still alive. The thing is, today, it's very, very easy to buy pet supplies at stores that don't sell animals. And so that's a very, very easy thing that a person, like if you have a cat or a dog, just make sure you don't go to PetSmart or Petco or any big box store that sells animals, and instead go to any number of animal supply stores. Depending on where you are here, we've got, Centinela, we've got Urban Pet, we've got all kinds of stores that only sell supplies. We also really delved into and did a second investigation into blood banks for animals. So if you're unfortunate enough to have an animal who needs a blood transfusion or needs blood for some disease, where does that blood come from? I mean, that's a question a lot of us don't ask, but in some cases, it comes from greyhounds who are kept in small kennels in places like where we did an investigation here in Southern California called Hemopet. So they keep these greyhounds in small kennels. Many of them are living on concrete floors, and these are really bony animals. So they're sitting on the concrete floors. They develop, abscesses. They develop calluses, and they're bled a lot for sometimes up to 2 years. And these animals have already been through it in many cases by being abused by the greyhound racing industry. Then they go on to a place like Hemopet, where they're kept and bled for up to 2 years, where they should have been adopted out. And then the blood is given to veterinary clinics. And so what we're telling people is, if you're ever in a position to need blood, ask your veterinarian, ask them now, where do they buy their blood, and discourage them from buying from places like Hemopet. Davis has a really great program and other places do too, but Davis Veterinary School has a program where you can volunteer your dog to come in and have blood taken. And that blood is then used and given to animals in need. It's very cool too, because your animal gets to leave, obviously, and go home with you and live the life they deserve. And you also can get your animal's blood checked, because our dogs do have to have blood draws very regularly. So you get a free veterinary check out of it. So your dog benefits and other dogs benefit as well. I've given blood from my cat for other cats. When she needed a blood draw, they just took extra. So those are the things that we as consumers can do.
Yeah, and people can go to PETA.org and see that Hemopet investigation, where it does expose the greyhounds and how they're treated in these blood banks. There was one other investigation, and it coincided with Prop 12. Prop 12 did pass, but PETA went into egg farms and looked to see how how the chickens were treated there. Tell me about that investigation.
Yeah, this is it's very disturbing because Prop 12 unfortunately led people to believe that there is such a thing as humane farming for eggs, and that simply couldn't be further from the truth. Prop 12 was such a faulty proposition. I mean, it allows egg farmers, and not until starting in 2022, so they even have that long to adjust, to only give egg-laying hens a square foot of space, and that is nothing. They're packed into warehouses, and as our investigation saw, it was at an egg farm that it referred to itself as the Disneyland of chicken farms, that these animals live in overcrowded warehouses. They are smashed together. They have a square foot of space is nothing for these animals. It's not enough for them to spread their wings. And because there is such a thing as pecking order, when they're overcrowded, they have to fight for their food. So the weaker ones don't get food. They'll often be trampled on. They can die of starvation or dehydration because they simply can't access the food. And our reminder to people is the only humane meal is a vegan meal. Don't be fooled by things like Prop 12. It does not improve the welfare of these animals. The way to improve the welfare of chickens is to simply stop eating them and to simply stop eating eggs. And it's the easiest thing in the world to do.
Okay, and once again, that was Prop 12 in California, which was passed. But like you said, there's 2 years before it goes into effect. But the PETA investigation, which people can see at PETA.org. Well, all right, so we covered clothes. We covered the investigations. How about animals in laboratories? Tell me about the significant things in 2018 that PETA did.
This was a really, really big year. We do a lot of behind the scenes dealing with companies and laboratories. And this year, the big announcements were that Dove finally went cruelty-free, and Unilever, which is the biggest consumer goods company in the world, banned all tests not required by law. That is huge. And that's a reaction to the work that PETA has been doing since we were founded. Our very first investigation for PETA was a laboratory investigation. It was a Silver Spring monkey case. And since then, we've been one of the only groups that's been hammering away at this. And that on the cosmetic testing front, we've just about won that. We also won Volkswagen ended all animal experiments after PETA exposed that they were doing horrible diesel fume experiments on monkeys. I mean, these are things you can't even in your wildest imagination think a car company would be doing, but Volkswagen was. We pressured them and they ended it. Another big victory this year was South Korea and Japan ended pesticide tests on dogs. And these are the things that people don't even know about because they're taking place behind the locked doors in laboratories. These are government-sponsored tests in a lot of cases. And PETA finds out about them, pressures in all manner of ways. We were able to get 20 food companies, including General Mills and Hershey's, to ban hideously cruel experiments where animals are either force-fed, they're starved, they're forced to run on treadmills to exhaustion, and much, much more. I mean, we have a lot more work to do. If you go to PETA.org, you can see that we're putting pressure on laboratories across the country to stop these archaic and horribly cruel forced swim tests that take place in laboratories where they dump rats into water and force them to swim until they either give up or they drown. These have been going on for years and years and years, allegedly to study depression in human beings, to try to understand when is it when a human being will give up. When you never know if a rat is stopping because they're trying to conserve their energy, or they're giving up because they're exhausted, or they're giving up because they're too depressed to go on. There is absolutely no relevancy in these tests like we see across the board. So our work to get animals out of laboratories continues, of course, but we've had a lot of great victories this year.
And the victories in 2018, just when you mentioned how Dove went cruelty-free and Unilever banned all tests not required by law, a simple thing like that saves hundreds of thousands of animals, I'd imagine. By them not having the test, right?
Oh, absolutely. Directly lives are saved. Animals are taken out of laboratories. They are not tested on, but it also sets an amazing precedent because now it's just very easy for people to say, I'm not going to buy a product that's tested on animals. And so the companies that are still testing on animals are losing money. Every single company, especially the biggies, like Dove, that just really helps us win the next one.
You save the animals from the labs, and PETA is also rescuing animals too. Tell us some of the situations where animals get taken out of horrible places.
Yeah, we do. We have a big push in roadside zoos for bears, and we were able to save 2 more bears this year named Ben and Bogey, and taken out of a horrible roadside zoo, now living at a sanctuary, being able to be bears. And that brings a number of rescued bears for us, for just PETA, to 72. And, that's a big, big deal for these animals.
Animals rescued, roadside zoos. Another area that PETA looks into is getting companies to stop supporting cruelty. Tell me about some of the companies that did what PETA wanted this year.
Yeah, well, one of the biggies was that Jack Daniel's dumped its sponsorship of the incredibly cruel Iditarod race. Hundreds of dogs have died since they started the race. They don't die nicely. They die from exhaustion. They choke on their own vomit. They get very sick. They rip up their paws. And that's just during the race. I mean, to me, the saddest thing, and you can see the footage on our website, and if you get a chance to see the movie Sled Dogs, I urge everybody to see that very compelling, beautifully made movie. It's how these dogs live between races. They are chained outdoors in the worst of the weather extremes. They get no companionship. They're chained to these dilapidated dog houses, and that's it. That's their life until they're raced. And so the Iditarod, we hope, is soon to be ended. We're going to keep fighting on that. Jack Daniel's really helped with that. We're continuing to put pressure on AAA. A couple of states, Washington and Arizona, stopped advertising SeaWorld for SeaWorld because there is a connection between the companies, and that was a big victory. But we've got a long way to go on that as well. We're making some great headway. And I would be remiss too if I didn't mention that our work in the field in some of the most impoverished areas in the South, Southern Virginia, Northern North Carolina, where there are very few laws that help animals, though we're changing that. We're getting tethering laws passed all the time. But, PETA spays or neuters more than 10,000 animals every year, some for free. Feral cats are for free. Pit bulls are for free. We go into the field and we get animals off chains. We improve their lives. We've found homes for a number of animals. We work with some wonderful open admission shelters in our area. Our emergency hotline helped more than 17,000 animals this year. We have a national emergency pager, brilliant volunteers. So we're busy. We're getting a lot done.
Well, one of the issues I know is really near and dear to your heart is the SeaWorld issue. Just give us a little update about where PETA is on the ending of the abuse of orcas in SeaWorld at this point.
Well, we're keeping the pressure on them because people want to do right by them, know that SeaWorld is not good for dolphins and whales. What gets a little confusing for people, I think, is that they know that orcas are no longer being bred by SeaWorld. But what they don't know is that SeaWorld is still breeding and transporting other animals like dolphins and beluga whales. And life for these animals is every bit as bad. They live in these small tanks. They're raked by their tank mates. They swim in continuous small circles, and they're denied everything that's natural and important to them. And so we continue to put the pressure on SeaWorld, and where we're seeing a lot of it, where it's clear that our pressure is working and consumer pressure is working, is that SeaWorld is really playing up and adding to their non-animal attractions. And so any billboard that you see in Southern California, because SeaWorld San Diego is here, it talks about the amusement park rides and doesn't even have pictures of orcas anymore. I think they know that people reject that. And so they're trying to lure them in with the other attractions. It does make life a little bit difficult for us because that means that people are kind of forgetting. You talk to a lot of people and they're saying, oh yeah, didn't they end their animal acts? It's hard for people to keep track of it. This is my life. This is what I do day in and day out. But your average person who has a million other things to think about is not keeping up with it. So it's really our responsibility to keep reminding people that until SeaWorld ends all of its animal attractions, don't go.
One other area, well, one big general area is the media. What would you consider were the biggest media hits for you this year in 2018, Lisa?
Every expose that we've had, from our investigations, working with the media to expose those.
But how about just personally? What were the stories that meant the most to you then?
There was a dog who our community animal project rescued, and her name was Miss Willy. And she had been on a chain for, I think it was 17 years. And by the time we were finally able to ask the people who owned her and neglected her to give her up, she was weeks away from death. And we were, one of my colleagues actually took her in and did a bucket list for her and let her, enjoy the beach and enjoy her favorite foods. She lived for, I think it was about 2 weeks, and we documented what her life was like as it should have been that entire time. And we took that video and we sent it to the media to show them exactly what we find in the field and how badly man's best friend is neglected, can be neglected. And that story blew up. It seemed like every media outlet around the country, around the world, showed that video. And that was important because it's just a reminder that this type of thing goes on, and PETA is hard at work ending it. That's one of the stories that come to mind. But I'll tell you, it's very hard to narrow it down. That's just something that I watched that video. I've seen that video numerous times. And so that really, really, really resonated with me, as it obviously did with so many other people.
In 2018, I always ask people what keeps them motivated to keep at it. 2018, a good motivating year for animal rights activists?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's very motivating to see the successes. When you're winning, it keeps you coming back. And we have work to do. I mean, Canada Goose is a company that it's one of our major targets right now. While the world is moving away from fur, and as we said, all these designers are no longer using it, Canada Goose is selling really ugly, expensive jackets with coyote trim. Coyotes are, they're trapped in the wild, and then they're beaten or shot. And there's no way to sugarcoat that. And so that they can be a bit of trim on these horrible jackets. And then we, of course, did an investigation into one of the down suppliers to Canada Goose, too, that showed geese that were being crammed together and suffocating. That's so that they could have their feathers plucked. For what? For a jacket you don't need. It's appalling. So, it helps to have so many victories. We come back fresh and hard and tenacious at these companies like Canada Goose and like SeaWorld. And we will win those. I mean, that's just, there are no two ways about it.
PETA's Senior VP of Communications, Lisa Lange, on 2018, and what a year it was. Hey, go to PETA.org and see the videos of the investigations that Lisa talked about. See more about the stories there. Also, listen to the podcast archive about issues like the Canada Goose stories, episode 44, Angora, episode 41, the Dog Blood Banks, Hemopet, episode 39, the Mohair investigation, episode 30. There was so much in 2018. It's all there. Find out more about the issues that made the year a banner one for the animals. Hey, you can contact us at PETA.org. Find me on Twitter at Emil Amok, that's EMILAMOK, or on amok.com, AMOK.com. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. And don't forget, you can help the animals and PETA, especially if you have Amazon's Alexa. Just say, Alexa, donate to PETA. Our music is provided by CarbonWorks. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Emil Guillermo. Happy holidays.